you're a scientist and you're trying to quantify things. That's ultimately what you do. But the psychology side isn't always about quantification, right? And so
Yeah.
you're kind of on this weird edge where you're trying to really prove the science behind this as opposed to the theories. And when it comes to psychedelics, you've got obviously all sorts of other, things wrapped up into it as far as human emotions and feelings and what we think it is, not to mention then the whole past of it being illegal and banned. So there's a lot going on with your field in that sense.
Yeah, yeah, it's true. It is a fine line to walk. But for me, a lot of it comes from, first of all, I suppose when you're immersed in it, and I've been reflecting on this recently. I've always reflected on it, really, whether I'm too immersed in my work. But just recently, a junior colleague, said something which made me very self-aware.
What was that? Can you share it?
Yeah, I can, yeah. So I was telling him about how I was recently invited to speak at the International Psychoanalysis Association event. And this was quite cool for me, given my background of interest, but I'd never really been formally training as an analyst or doing any academic work really in the psychoanalytic space. So it was a novelty. And there I was presenting on my brain imaging research and how it interfaces with psychoanalysis. And I was telling him I was in a talk, a session before my talk on psychoanalysis and politics. And the analysts in the room were discussing the role of an analyst as being neutral, that you don't take a position, and how that is clinically the way they do things, because then you project onto your analyst all these different things that tell you something about your unconscious, And there are things like transference, relationships that play out where the analyst may become a father figure or a mother figure, that kind of thing. So anyway, they were talking about neutrality, and they were sort of saying it's difficult when you see things going on politically to remain neutral, and that dilemma of whether you become partisan and sort of declare your views, or you remain neutral, just watching what's playing out in the world. And one of the analysts said, I decided I would take a position, and then another analyst colleague accused me of manic defense. And I thought, what a fascinating term. I'm sure I've heard it before, but I've never really digested the term, but manic defense. And so I was telling my colleague this over lunch, and he said, very sort of gently, have you ever reflected on whether something like this happens with you, with your work? And I sort of smiled and said, yes. But I'd never really digested it, So I looked at him and I said, it's remarkable how blind we can be to our defenses. And he sort of quietly nodded, and we got on with things. But since that was only a couple of days ago, I've been thinking about that a lot,
And so how does that actually manifest itself in that the fact that you're blind to your own assumptions about your own work, thinking that it's this and it's that?
Yeah.
And the manic defense is something you just put up when someone tries to challenge that? Or am I misunderstanding?
I think it's just what psychological function does your work do for you?
Okay.
It's that. And of course we can all relate to that, and we all get lost in our work. In a sense, it's the condition, but this is of course deferring it onto everyone, so normalizing it. It's the condition of particularly the modern Western man, that you're always active.
Yeah.
And
so that can make you less objective because you're always
perhaps less sort of fully sort of aware of yourself and sitting with everything like you would if you were meditating, for example, and things start coming up, or you're in a psychedelic session and things are coming up, some of which are difficult and painful to sit with. But you sit with them, because that's the name of the game.
Yeah.
But in a sense, what work can do, and it's not always the case, but often it's the case, is it kind of takes us away from ourselves, and we almost forget and maybe repress by being so immersed in our work. So it was that really that got me was a bit of a reminder because I've sort of always known that. But
Yeah, and you are very immersed in your work.
yeah.
And it is really important work, and you probably are constantly being reminded how important it is and being told how important it is.